Hello, you guys. Welcome to Then and Now.
Hi, welcome back. We are your hosts. I'm Tracy.
And I'm Alexa.
And if you watched last episode, we kind of made a little announcement that
Very excited about this announcement.
We're super excited. You can now start donating to the podcast, and one of the big things that we also want to know is what y'all want to hear from us.
Yeah.
You can leave like questions, comments, and then,
depending what you're watching it on Spotify, there's a link below, and you can comment whatever. Obviously on YouTube you can comment. We have our email on all social medias, so we'd love to hear you guys' advice and things you guys want to hear from us.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I think let's get into today's episode.
Yes, let's dive in.
Yeah, we are going to start talking about changing seasons today. And I feel like that's something that we always kind of go through in life, and it's something that, it's scary, and I know personally I'm not good with change.
Yeah.
I struggle.
It depends, but I'm not either. I think everybody is, because it's so unfamiliar. It is going to be a struggle, but yeah, it's not fun, honestly.
No.
And I think that's also when your faith is tested the most.
Yeah,
when
definitely.
You're on unfamiliar ground, you don't know what's next in life, and you're just like, Lord, like, I have to trust that you have, like, this is all in your hands.
Yeah.
So
And it's so hard to do that too.
Yeah. So we're gonna kind of hit on like two different main topics, but I feel like we both went through a lot of change the last few years.
Yeah.
And I know, like, especially when you're going in college and getting out of college, like, change is just happening, and it's like scary changes, and it's you're going to the real world, or you're trying to find a job, or you're moving out of a relationship. So there's many different things. Yeah, or into a relationship. So we're gonna dive into some things today. First off?
Yeah, okay, I'll start off. So we're kind of going to talk about how changing seasons like affect growth in the Lord and you, honestly, because I think when you go into a new season, it's so unfamiliar, like you said earlier, that we're all uncomfortable and don't really want to accept the change sometimes until it's like you're kind of bulldozed into it.
I completely agree.
If that
or
makes sense.
even like for me, it was like a good example is when I moved to Missouri.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to go to Missouri, and I was like excited to be there. And then when I got there, it was like the change hit me.
Yeah.
And it was not what I expected, job wise. And it was just a season of like, I was in the midst of just like a growth season, and I didn't know it. And in that season, I was just like calling, like, as I've said before, y'all have heard it, literally calling Tracy every day, crying, like wondering what I was doing there. Like, just not like, just shaky grounds. And sometimes you don't even realize like a season of change or like growth until you're out of it, and you like can reflect and be like, oh my gosh, there was so much going on in that season that I was like felt like was chaotic and so unfamiliar, but I grew so much and I learned so much from it. So I think a lot of the time it's like the reflection after that season.
I feel like the reflection is the best part, because like I think back to even if you're like going from high school to college, that like change to me was one of the biggest in my life,
and that's like an exciting change.
It's
too.
an exciting change.
It's a nervous, but
sure.
I feel like overall it is an exciting change. So there's not just like scary changes. There's exciting changes. And
there
stuff,
are exciting changes.
Continue.
Like I think a lot of things when you're like, especially getting older in young adult life, I think that's when you're really going to experience your most change. And I think that's where when we're younger, we kind of get scared of it because we get so comfortable.
Yeah.
Like from high school to college, you're like going to go and you're going to realize you're like, oh, I don't have my parents anymore. I'm going to make new friends. Or you're at home and all your friends went off to college, and now you're like, well, what should I do? Like, are you going to take that gap year? Are you going to work? Are you going to, like, what are you going to do?
And I feel like in that season too, you're more reliant on yourself, you know, and it's your, like, oh, I'm making the decisions for myself. Like, somebody else isn't making, like, determining whether I can do this or do that, or I'm choosing what I'm going to do not even do for the rest, like, choosing what I'm going to major in, or choosing if I'm going to take that year off or not. So it's a lot of responsibility, and that's, like, it's a lot of stress in the midst of it.
And it's scary.
Yeah.
And I think, like, a lot of people kind of push that aside sometimes because you don't realize the change and realize, like, all the hard stuff you're about to walk through until you're in the midst of it, and you're like, well, what am I going to do? Like, what do I do? And for me, I mean, I would say, like, when I went to college and even, like, moving from Georgia College to Georgia State, like, that was weird because Milledgeville was such a small town, like, very, like, you think of, like, a hometown college, like, that's what Milledgeville was. And then moving to Georgia State, it was city. Yeah. Like, we're going in the city.
Completely change of environment.
So different. Very different. And I think I relied on myself completely because I didn't know the Lord well enough to, like, really dive into, like, the change that he had coming for me. And it's something that I've had to look back on and be like, yes, I was relying on myself, but he was in it every moment of, like, the big things I didn't realize he was in.
I completely agree. And I think, like, for me, my biggest thing, like, right now I'm going through some changes, like, possibly, like, upcoming changes. And it's really scary to me because, like, I don't know the answers to some of the things that I want to know the answers to. And it's just that fear factor of, oh, am I gonna get, like, but then when you, like, put it in perspective, it's like, this isn't in my hands, like, and I go back to, like, even when you read the whole Bible, like, you can't just go to a book in the Bible and read it and think you know the whole book, you know, it's like looking at a puzzle piece and knowing what the whole puzzle looks like, and you have to see the whole puzzle to be able to put the pieces together. And I feel like that's also, like, life, and it's like this season where I'm stressed out, and I'm like, what's gonna happen next, like, am I doing these things right? And it's also like I have to step back and be like, this is just a little puzzle piece in a whole puzzle that's being, like, made and put together by God for my life. Absolutely. And I think it's all about how you look at things, because that just helps me not stress as much. And I'm like, you know what, this is God's. This is in God's hands. And if I don't get this as much as I want it, then that's not the route I need to be going. You know? And so I think seasons of change show your faith a lot, and it shows, and it, like, tests your faith, and just truly trusting God and trusting his plans for your life, which is not an easy thing to do, but, you know, that's why we have faith. And
so what do you think has been the biggest change for you? Like, what's your biggest example that you think you could be like, that's where I learned the most, that's where I, like, found God the most? Or, oh
my gosh, for sure Missouri.
Yeah? You want to touch on it a little
bit? Yeah.
I mean, I was there with you, not with you, but you know what I mean.
As I kind of talked a little bit in our testimony episode, like, my life has been very fast-paced, and I love to be go. I love to be doing things all the time. So when I slow down in life, it's like, at the end of the night, I'll go to bed, and that's, like, my slow time, you know? Yeah. And for when I got to Missouri, it was like I had 4 roommates, and then the people I worked with, and that was it. And, like, we lived in the middle of nowhere. Obviously, I lived on the sanctuary. If y'all don't know, I'll give some backstory. So I worked at it.
Yeah, you're, like, talking, like, I just went to Missouri.
If you haven't listened to some of our other episodes. So after I graduated college, I love animals. Oh, I'm a big animal. And I've always wanted to work at a sanctuary. And so I found a tiger sanctuary in Missouri, and I did a hospitality internship there over the summer after I graduated, like, 2 years ago. And so when I got there, I was like, first of all, I got there and I was the first person of all the interns. There was 4 other interns.
Because you went earlier, right?
Yeah. 4 other interns, and I was there alone for 2 weeks. And I've never, like, been alone for that long in my thoughts and my feelings. And it was a lot. Like, and there was a lot that I had to deal with that I didn't really, like, sit and take time to, like, think about, you know, because when you're sitting there and thinking so much and you're alone, you're stuck in your thoughts. Like, you're gonna be thinking about your life, you're gonna be thinking about the decisions you've made, the things that have happened in your life. And so it was literally like,
well, you know what I just thought of? Like I thought of, like, the meme of, like, when you're sitting in bed and, like, it's night and you're, like, trying to go to bed, you put your electronics down, but then you're like, my brain's just going. Yeah. And it won't stop.
And that was
I'm alone
me,
and I
like,
hate it.
That was literally me 24/7.
Yeah,
and even
I don't
in,
know how you did
like,
it.
everyday work, because what I was doing is I was the only hospitality intern, so I did a lot of the work on my, like, I was working a lot on my own.
Yeah.
And so
she would call me, like, mid-work day. And we would be on the phone for probably 3 hours as I'm also sitting
I'm like, I need social interaction. I gotta talk.
Yeah. She would just, like, be at my internship with me. I'd be walking around, and they were like, who are you on the phone with? And I was like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, literally. But it was just, like, a lot of alone time. And as much as it was, like, that's why I called Tracy crying so much, because there was so much I was dealing with, and like pain I was finally feeling and facing. And you know, I feel like in the midst of that I was a mess, but I also was a mess, and it made me come back to God and cling on to God. And like I said in my testimony episode, like that was like, I like brought my Bible because I was hopeful to start reading it in Missouri and like getting back in the Word.
I feel like God also like kind of put it on your heart too, because I don't think I think you would have brought your Bible, but like I feel like he was like, you need to bring your Bible, like this is my time to like kind of like dig into you, even though you don't realize it yet.
And I'm like, I love the sky, I love stars, I love sunsets. And so we were in like the most beautiful area, and like I would literally spend my nights outside in the stars and just pray. And like I felt like I was like literally sitting there talking to God and dealing with these things that I hadn't dealt with. And like it was just a very emotional season, and I like there were a lot of nights of just crying by myself. And that's like, in the moment I was like, why? Like,
you're like,
why?
I need
to go home. I need to be back in my like I need to be back in the swing of things. Like I need to be go. But it was like, no, God was like, you need to be still, and you need to sit in this season, and so you are able to heal, and I can send you, and you can do what you're meant for. Because prior to Missouri, like I was very insecure about a lot of things. Like I was shaky about who I was. Like I didn't know. I questioned everything I was doing. And so it's like when you're questioning yourself and you don't know who you are, and you don't know that the Lord has you, you're going to be shaky in anything. And it's hard for him to be able to send you to do what you're meant to do.
I can even see like the confidence that you like from where you left to where you came back, like how God like touched you in that season, and how it really like showed that if you really do sit with God and just kind of slow down, which coming from me, I don't know how to slow down either at all.
Yeah, it's hard.
But like especially right now, like it's just been a lot going on, but seeing how you can like just take a moment and be by yourself with God, it's like he really calls us to do that and be like, really dig into my word, really dig into what I have to say, because I will speak to you even if it's your most struggling season.
And I, like obviously life is like crazy busy, and I think it's cool when I look back and it's like I was so excited to go to Missouri.
You're so
excited.
And
it was like a change that I was excited for, and then when I got there it was like a change I was like, what the heck am I doing? It's like it was such a pivot in my life, like moment where God was like, I'm gonna take you out of this like your busyness and this like the way that you live, and I'm gonna show you like who you are, and bring you confidence, so I can send you back out and let you do the gifts that you were like born with, and like I gave you.
I love that.
And so I definitely say that was like the biggest season, and it was, change is never easy. Like whether you're going into it excited and then you're in the midst of it and it's like, what am I doing? Like why? But there's growth that always comes out of it.
Absolutely.
And what about you?
I feel like the biggest losing my mom was definitely the biggest change, but I feel like that's not really when I changed, if that makes sense. Like my life,
but it was changed. That was a change in your like.
Yes, my life changed completely upside down. Like I was like shook to my core. I didn't know how to handle it. I knew like I did step into my mom's role when I was 16. Like I felt like I needed to. Like some kids I know that lost their parents young as well, like went through a hard time and turned to certain things like drinking and whatnot. I did do that at a certain point, and I turned away from God, but at the same time, like, I also stepped in because I felt like, you know how, like, sons, like, I feel like I need to be the man of the household when
I feel like
their dad
from
passes.
what you told me, you had to step into your mother's
I felt
role.
like I had to step into my mom's role, so I took that, and I did mature really quickly, but I was still emotionally immature, and so it really took 4 years for me to really be, like, I was insecure, I was anxious, I was still having panic attacks, like, that, and I didn't see God working, and the one time I remember, like, was the biggest turn point of the change that I found God was when Louie was doing a talk on, it was called Breathe. The whole series was called Breathe, and at 18, I got a tattoo of a daisy, which is the flower that represents my mom's birth month, and on the stem, it had a word. I don't remember what it was, but I changed it.
Yeah.
And I changed it to breathe for my anxiety. And then I realized that, like, the whole talk that Lou was doing was on breathing and on anxiety and on how to get through these things and lean on God.
Yeah.
And I looked down and I just started bawling my eyes out. And I was like, he told me to change the word. And I was like, I know, like, tattoos aren't, like... Everyone's like, it's indifferent about tattoos and, like, Christianity.
Topic,
it is a controversial topic, and I understand that. But, like, for me, I saw it as, like, God was there. And he was changing me and molding me into who I was today and, like, bringing me back to him. Even on that small little token where it's like, yes, it's controversial in the Christian world about tattoos. But, like, that to me was, like, he was there. And I finally, like, realized, like, I could step out of being the mother and, like, step back from my family and, like, learn who I was. Like, not step back, but be able to be who I was and not take all of their issues onto me and just help them with things.
Yeah.
Instead of just being the mother, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, and I think it was cool you talking about, like, such a small token, because I think that's how God works. And I think that as small as, like, the little tattoo you got after your mom passing, and then this, like, obviously whole series that was, like, very attentive to who, like, anxiety, you and what you were walking through, and, like, being able to connect that, like, that's literally a puzzle piece and, like, the puzzle for your life. And I think that's so cool, and that's, like, why I just, like, I'm in awe of God and how he does these connections throughout our life, like, whether it's from 2 years old all the way to 60, and it's, like, this connection. It's, like, a big graph. It's like the graph.
It's the graph. And, like, if you, like, we've talked about it before, but Louis, our pastor, was talking about how in the Bible it's like a straight line, and it's just like
all the connections
it's a
throughout the Bible,
and I can't even remember the number, but it has so many crossovers in the Bible from what you hear to one place to another.
One parable,
one parable to another. And I think that's the biggest thing that happened in my life was when, like, losing my mom at 16 to just now, like, I look back and I see, like, the small things that have connected me and grown my faith to where I'm like, okay, I see where he was at. But in the midst of that changing season, like, I didn't trust him. And I wasn't with him. And I would argue to the depths of my core about church. I wouldn't step foot in a church. Because I was so angry that he took my mom from me. And I look back on it now, and it's just, like, that was such a changing season. It's something that, like, we just did a series that was called Epicenter, and he was talking about the all things. And in the all things, he was like all the struggles. And I think that's kind of the definition of a changing season sometimes. Like, he's going to be with you the most in your struggles. And for me, that was what it was. And it was like, sometimes people want to feel related to in those struggles. And it's like they want to hear from the things that you struggle from too. And I'm like, okay, was that God saying, like, help someone if death comes up, or they do lose a parent, or anxiety?
And I think that's how God turns bad into good. And
absolutely.
To minister to people that have walked through what you walked through and don't have that strength, and it gives hope to people, like being able to speak in light when they're in darkness and they're going through the same thing.
Ephesians
and they
5:8.
You love your Ephesians.
I love Ephesians. That one's just does it. It's
but it literally does give people, like, light at the end of the tunnel.
It does.
And when you're in the midst of, like, a dark season, it literally feels like you're in a dark tunnel and there's no light to see through. So seeing like somebody that's come out on the other side, for me, like, that's hope. And that shows that I can get through this. It's not, I'm still going to struggle.
Absolutely. Everyone is.
I'm not just going to be in the good, like, right after, but it gives that hope to keep people to keep pushing, because God doesn't give us things that we can't handle.
No.
And
there's the quote that I think a lot of people hear. It's like, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. But I feel like if you're walking with God, you're always going to be one of his toughest soldiers. Even with how minuscule, like, your thing might seem to others, it's never that small, because to you it's big. You know?
That's good. Yeah. Like, and I want to connect kind of that to Isaiah 43:18, and it says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up, do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." And I feel like even to what we just said, like, when we were in the wilderness and we were in the wasteland, and it seemed like these rough patches of our lives, like he was doing a new thing, and like it's cool to be on the other end and like be like, oh my gosh, like thank you Lord, because I felt like everything was being torn down in that season. And not necessarily absolutely. Like relating that to Missouri, but like for you when your mom passed, like I'm sure you felt like your whole life was crumbling.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, and even though it still hurts you to this day,
I don't think
it's never gonna go away. But the growth like that you've had in your life, and just, I mean, I've seen you be able to minister and like talk to people that have gone through these things, and like I can see like them like beaming up because they can see that you are in a good place when they're like not, and they're like, I can get there, and that gives hope to people.
I think like that's another thing like with the changing season, is that I feel like you're always going through a changing season, whether it is small or like small to you or big to you. It could be a job change.
Tough.
And
I can hit on that because I mean,
from going like restaurant, like we were in the restaurant industry, so I went from restaurant to restaurant for a while through college, and then I went to an internship, and I was in sports, and then I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, and now I'm where I'm at now, and I'm in like a construction company, like working in the accounting department, and I'm just like, this is so weird. Like the change was just, it's not what I expected. I didn't think I'd end up
It's literally never what you expect.
No, and it's like, but I know God's putting me here for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's like, I understand, or I don't understand why I'm here in this moment. But I think back to like my restaurant days, and I was like, in the season I was at then, that was when I was like in the midst of, I don't care what I'm doing. I'm just going to do whatever. I'm going to live worldly. I'm not going to live godly. And now I'm here, and it's like, maybe this like company is definitely not like godly, but he put me here
and that's what I was going to hit on, because I think it's hard for me as a Christian. I'm like in my job, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Me too.
Like I'm not doing anything throughout my day, and it's like, no, we're supposed to go into our workplaces. Like, we're supposed to go into the places that aren't, like, godly. And we're supposed to be that light to shine. So you could, just as much for me, because we both, like, talk about how much we struggle in our, like, careers. And,
not like, that I don't appreciate my job. No. Because I 100%, and I do enjoy my job.
It's a hard shift in life in general. And not feeling like you're doing having a purpose. And I think, like, we can minister in our jobs where it doesn't feel like we can, like, you don't even know, like, somebody could be looking at you in your job and being like, oh my gosh, like, she's such a light, and like, you could be shining onto somebody else and not even know it, and that's what God's doing in that.
Well, I even think, like, for you, when she got really close to one of her coworkers, and I just, like, we all went to the gym one day, and there was just this point where she was just, like, feeding into her, and then there was another lady in there, and she started speaking to her, and
this random lady, y'all, it was so this is random. Like such a God moment. Let's talk about this,
because this was such, even at, like, in her
we're
eyes,
in the sauna,
like
we are dying. First of all, we sat in the sauna for an hour.
We were gonna be in there for 20 minutes.
We almost passed. I swear to goodness, I thought
we were gonna pass out. I was so hot. I was like, I gotta go get water, but this conversation
the Lord was so working
good. Though. Besides the point, we were talking about jobs, and we were just like, because she's in the midst of like changing her job, and I was like, I like my job, but I'm like, is this my purpose? And then her other friend,
us three girls were having this conversation, and this random lady walks in and sits down,
and we didn't know she was a Christian, but she was like, she went to law school. She was an OBGYN, and I was like, you went to medical school and law school. Like, this is insane.
Little background is, my friend, she had like wanted to go to law school,
and I didn't know anything about this.
I barely knew about it. Like, it had been brought up like once, but it wasn't like I wanted to do it. Like, it wasn't something that I knew was actually a desire of hers.
Absolutely not.
And we were just sitting there, I think we were just talking about our jobs, and this lady that comes in, and then she ends up telling us that she like never comes in the sauna. This was her first time back in the gym since she had a surgery, so she hadn't been in the gym for like months,
and she like left the sauna because her friend was there. She's like, I can't sit here anymore, and then she came back in.
And we were discussing like jobs and just struggles and stuff, and she started randomly talking to us.
Yeah.
And she ended up talking about how she went to law school to get a law degree. She didn't like use it. She didn't practice it. Mm-mm. But she was like, I just want to know that knowledge, which I think is great. And really just spoke to my friend that nobody knew about this like deep down like desire to go to law school and stuff. And like, it was just a cool moment where it was like, this is God. Like, this is God putting this woman in my friend's life to tell her to go after what you want. Yeah. And
as we were literally talking about how we were all struggling in a certain area. Yeah. And she was just like, it was a change that she didn't want to embrace. Yeah. Like, she was like, I don't want it, out of fear. She was doing it out of fear because she didn't want to go take the LSAT.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't want to do it. And then this lady comes in and just speaks thoroughly. And she... like, we weren't sure if she was a Christian, so we didn't say anything, and which God calls us to. So it's like, I think back, I'm like, why didn't we? But
we ended up.
I think we ended up.
Because it got brought up.
I think because we were talking about the podcast, and like, we want to do a Christian podcast. She was like, oh, y'all are Christians? And we're like, yeah. And she just started, she was like.
That moment.
She was like, light. And she just spoke into her coworker, being like, you need to do this. Like, allow this moment to show that God is telling you to go back and do this and embrace the change and embrace the test and like be fearful but know God is in the works.
Yeah, it was a really cool moment.
It was.
And I think it's like even small moments like in a sauna, like God places people all the time in places to shine a light on somebody to bring them into what they're supposed to be doing, like give them hope. Like she gave her hope to like go and do that, give her the confidence to go and do that.
And I think that kind of touches on like our second point of how do you like actually embrace the change in the seasons, because I feel like for me, even with like something I'm going through right now, it's like a change and I'm trying to adjust to everything. It's hard, but like I'm excited to see the outcome at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's like I just keep praying and leaning on God and being like, this is what you put me in right now. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Whether that's my job, whether that's a friendship, whether that's a relationship, like whatever it could be, leaning on Him and trusting in His word is something that like you have to feel comfortable in. And like,
oh my gosh, that's faith in itself. Like having that faith that no matter what the outcome is, whether it's what I wanted or not, like this is for a reason. And that's like, as humans, like that's not what that's not what we're used to. We don't like
we're
that.
Used to comfortability.
And it's hard, but that's like the having trust in God and like truly leaning into Him. And I think like when like for us, like we are just like diving in the word, and like the more you get to know God, like you do begin to trust Him, and you do begin to like, you know, like have that stronger faith. And like for me back in Missouri, I would have been at more peace if I had that faith and that confidence in God. And I feel like now I'm here 2 years later and I'm going through a season of change, and it's like I don't have control of this. And it's not, I know whatever the outcome is going to be, it's going to be for the best, and it's going to be the right, leading me down the like route I'm supposed to be going down.
And even how we were talking about a little bit earlier, how we didn't know if we were going to be a light in our jobs, like why we're at our jobs at the moment. I think that speaking God's word, or even just being like, let God take the reins to someone like at my job, like you never know, like if they're a Christian or not, or they believe, or maybe they're trying to believe in something, and like they may just need to hear that. And it does kind of like, to me, I hear like Psalm 32:8, like this whole embracing the change. And it says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will console you with my loving eye on you. Which I love, because it's like, this is going to be hard, and you may not even realize how hard it is until you're out of it. But leaning on Him shows like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Even if it doesn't feel like it.
And I think like to like specifically talk about in your like workplace, it can get stressful, and it can get like there can be feuds in workplaces. Like work is just stressful, like it, you know. And I think being somebody that's positive, even though when you don't feel like, for me, I was having a really bad, like honestly last month at work, and I was just like, God, like help me to be positive, because I don't want to be positive right now, and I need like to still, you know, as much as everybody's like on rocks. Like, I need to be the, like, I don't want to say flower because that sounds cheesy. But, like,
the light.
You want to be the, not a rock. Like, I need to be something else. So, it, you know, and it's hard, especially when everybody else is, like, in the same mood and you're just, like, it's frustrating at work. And so I think, like, just staying positive and encouraging, like, your coworkers, Christian or not, like, that shows, like, that shows a light to them. And it's, you're just different from everybody else, and that's what God calls us to be, is like different from everybody else. And so just it's hard though, because I've been there, and like I'm in it with work right now, and so it's like, how can I be different from everybody else here, and how can I be positive and lift people up, even though it just seems like a season at work where it's like negative, you know?
And I think when negativity does creep in, I think it's kind of hard for you to want to lean on God, because you fall into the, like, talking bad, or like the, not talking bad, but like you just get wrapped up and all of the negativity, and then the negative thoughts creep in, and that's when the devil kind of attacks you, because it's like he'll find that thing and it's like, oh hey, and like start tapping on you and being like, hey, this is it. And
the
it
devil
takes
loves
you away.
to tap on this podcast.
Let me just tell you, this is a change.
You guys can get a little behind the scenes right now, because the way that we have like technical difficulties all the time, and it's weird because especially when we're like scripture heavy in a podcast we're getting ready for, it's like we have the worst technical errors. Like today, like our headphones weren't even working, the light fell, like our SIM cards have been like messing up. SIM cards don't mess up, so I'm like,
how do you
when
not work?
has some SIM cards
why do you not work? The camera cut off. I was like,
and it's just crap. Like going back to like the devil wants that, like he wants to come in, and like I get frustrated with technology, so I like he knows.
Me too. He knows,
so it's like he wants you to just get,
what the heck? I'm getting so mad to this.
He wants you to get to a point of frustration where you just walk away, and it's like, and that's even in a season of change. It's like it would have been easy I could have drove home from Missouri and left and not finished that season that I needed to finish and get through, and like keep going. Don't let the devil bring you down. And
I will even say, like, in this podcast, like, before we posted anything, we were getting everything, and everything was just lining up.
Yeah.
Like, it was like everything was lining up. It was all great. We had the support. Like, people were like, yes. And then we started doing it all, and we were like, like, we were just recording, and we were like, I don't know if we can do this. Like, I don't think we can.
Yeah, we had the camera out. Like, the camera stopped working one time. The audios were, like, we had to refilm, like, an episode, like, 3 times.
Even last episode, the camera didn't even, like, our video, sadly, didn't.
But we haven't given up yet.
We haven't given up, and we're not going to give up, because by the grace of God.
Yeah. She's like, with the technology.
With the technology, we'll get there. But it's like, it's cool to see, because this was a change in our life.
And it was scary. Like, it's scary coming on to, like, coming into a place and talking about things that... Vulnerability. And that's, like, not a strong suit of mine. And, like, I can see... but, like... It hasn't been a strong suit of mine, and I'm starting to say that. Like, I'm kind of shifting from it isn't to it wasn't, because I feel... I know. Okay. Like, I feel like this has helped me a lot, and, like, God's, like, shown me, even if, like, with this podcast, like, this is what you're called to do. Like, be vulnerable. Like, that helps other people. You know, like, back to what we were saying, it gives people hope when they can see a side that... of hardship that you've been through, and you're out of it. And so
and it also, like, I mean, I think even going back to, like, what I was saying earlier about, like, the all things, like, having simple words of encouragement or hearing certain things that were, like, keeps you going too. Like, even if it's, like, from your boss, like, oh, you're doing a great job, like, thank you for doing, like, all your work.
That literally will get me through another 2 weeks of work.
I'll be, all right, I'm going.
Literally.
Or even it's, like, a friend checking up on you, and you're having a hard time, and they're just, like, it's on their heart, and it's like, hey, like, I hope you're doing okay. I don't know, like, always check in on your friends, like, you know, or check in on your family.
How you feel when you receive things like that, like, think of that when you reach out to somebody, or you're thinking of reaching out to somebody, like, that could do so much in somebody's life and get them through another, whether it's 2 weeks or month.
A day.
And So, I mean, I would say coming out of this, like, as a conclusion, like, don't, like, in seasons of change, it's easy to walk away and, like, go back to your comfort.
Or easy to stay in your comfort.
But I think, like, really sitting and being still and trusting God, and if that's what he has in store for you, and having that faith, having that trust, and going into that season of change and not letting the devil hold you back. And
because he'll keep you in your comfortability if you are like listening to it. He will, and
things
and
are like,
that's okay to walk through, but don't allow yourself to stay in it. Like, seek God's word. And even like you said, Psalm 46:10, this is another thing she wanted to like touch on. It says, he says, be still and I know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations and I will be exalted in the earth. Which is beautiful. Like, it just says, like, he, like what we touched on, be still and know that he's there.
And I think that's good encouragement in seasons of change, is just being still and taking that time alone with God and just leaning in and trusting him, especially if you're waiting on like a decision on or an answer to something, or you know,
new relationship,
like,
new friendship,
it's
an
like,
old friendship.
Give it to God and put, like, that's why it's so important to have God in the center of your life and make decisions based around that.
Absolutely.
And he will guide you and put you where you need to be. So well, we're excited to talk to you guys next week.
But this is filmed on St. Patrick's Day weekend, so happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, wear green.
I hope you guys had a great time this weekend. Enjoyed a little green.
And the weather's starting to get nice, so enjoy the sun and be outside.
And be still and know God.
No, I am God. Amen to that. But seriously, guys, we'd love to hear, I know we said this at the beginning, but we really would love to hear some topics y'all want us to hit on. We love feedback. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next Thursday.
We'll see you next on the Now.
Bye.